Hello and welcome to this lecture, and in this lecture we are actually going to have a brief overview of Android Studio, which is an IDE which we are going to use for making Android apps. So in the previous lecture we have successfully created the project, and now let's have a look at each and everything which Android Studio actually has. So if you have a look at extreme left, this is what the Project Explorer tab looks like. So if you talk about your Android application is nothing but it's actually a collection of a bunch of files, such as an audio files, video files, text files, maybe some Java classes and some XML files. So what this project structure allows you to do is that it allows you to lay out all the files of your Android application in a systematic manner. And this is the main reason for using an IDE like Android Studio, because what it actually does is that helps us to manage all the files in an efficient manner. So this is what the project tab actually looks like. And if you have a look at here, there are a bunch of folders. So for example, you have the Java folder in which you have all the Java classes related to your application. Then you have the resources folder. Then you have a bunch of folders over here as well. And we are actually going to learn the significance of these folders very soon. So this was just a brief introduction about the Project Explorer tab. Now if you move on to this thing right here, which looks like your mobile screen, is nothing but it's actually the layout of your activity. So if you recall from the previous lecture, we have actually created an activity when we created our very first Android project. And I've already explained that an activity is similar to that of a web page. So for example, an activity is nothing but which appears on your mobile device and you basically interact with that screen, and that screen is nothing but it's actually called as an activity. Now, one interesting thing about this activity is that your activity is composed of two parts. So the first part of your activity is nothing but how your activity looks like. So if you could see in front of your screen, this is how the activity looks like. So this is just the basic display of your activity. And the next part of your activity is going to be the logic behind that activity. So if you switch to the main activity.java class, this is where the entire logic of your activity lies. So we are actually going to write in the Java code here. So the brains of your activity is actually written in Java, whereas the layout, or you could say the look and feel of your activity, is actually written in XML code. So this is the layout which is defined by the XML code, and this is the activity's logic which is actually defined in Java. And if you want to have a look at the XML code, what you could do is that you could simply go to activity_main.xml, and if you could see, there are two options right over here. So this is the design view, which basically allows you to design your activity by just dragging and dropping elements over here. And one more way of actually designing your activity's layout is by going to the text view over here. So if you click on text, as you could see, you will have a bunch of code which is XML code right over here. And what you need to do is that whenever you want to design or modify your activity, you just need to edit this code over here. So these are the two ways of basically changing the layout of your activity. One is by taking these elements. So these elements or views are nothing but they are actually buttons, the radio buttons, the rating bars. And what you could simply do is that you could take one of those, drag them up, and you could drop them over here to design your activity. Or also what you could do is that you could manually add them to your activity via XML code. So this is how you could design your activity in Android Studio. And if you want to write some logic, like for example, you could go ahead and add a button over here. But what you need to do is that you need to define what happens when you click that particular button. So that thing needs to be defined in this main activity.java class. And that's the reason why I have specified that the brain or the core logic of your activity lies in the main activity.java class. So essentially, every activity in Android actually has two parts. The first part is nothing but the look and feel, which is defined by the XML file. Then you have the main core logic of that activity written inside the main activity.java file. So once this thing is done, the next most important thing which I would like to point out is about these widgets right over here. So if you have a look at here, there are a bunch of widgets like a text view, a button, checkbox, radio buttons, plain text views, password fields, and everything like that. And these are the components which you will need in order to design the layout of your Android application. So as I mentioned, you could simply drag these things and drop them over here. and we are going to learn that in the next lecture. And one more thing which I would like to mention here is the theme of Android Studio. So if you have noticed, my Android Studio appears to be of a darker theme and yours might be having a lighter theme. So I'm going to show you real quickly how to change that. So if you want to change the theme of Android Studio, what you could do is that you could go to Android Studio and go to Preferences. And in case if you're on Windows, you could go to the File option and you could go to Settings. And in here, if you have a look at the appearance over here, the theme which is selected is Darkula. So if you select a Darkula theme, you are going to get a layout which is the darker layout, and if you choose the default theme, then you're actually going to get a lighter layout. So you could do that by going into Appearance, and your theme is going to change accordingly. And you simply need to hit OK, and you will have the modified theme as well. Now once you're done with this, the final thing which I would like to explain here is the directory structure. So if you could notice, right now we have two main files to work with, that is the main activity and the activity_main.xml. So all the Java files which are related to your Android application are going to be present in the Java folder. So if you go to the main app folder, you have the manifest folder, and right below the manifest folder you have the Java folder. So if you simply open this thing up, and if you open up the first folder, which is essentially having the package name, as you could see, you are going to have the main activity, which is the most important activity or the first activity of your Android app, and that actually contains the Java code. And if you want to add another Java class to your Android application, you have to add it to this particular folder right here. Now if you go to resources folder, the resources folder is actually going to contain the resources which are required for your Android application. So for example, let's say you want to add an image to your Android application. So that is essentially a resource, and that resource is going to be present in the drawable folder which is specified right here. Now right next to the drawable folder, we also have the layout folder. So if you click on it, as you could see, this layout folder actually contains the layout file for our main activity. So right now at this moment in our application, we only have one activity, and henceforth we have only one layout file, which is the layout file for the main activity. But let's say if you add another activity, then you're also going to have the XML file related to that as well. Now if you go over here, this is a minmap folder which basically contains the launcher icons, and we are going to learn about that in the upcoming lectures. And finally we have the values folder, wherein all the values which are used in your application are actually stored. So that's it for this lecture, and this was kind of a brief overview of Android Studio. So in the next lecture, what we will do is that we will learn how to basically run our very first Android Studio project. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.